Hey, it's Joshua Zeller, your cultural Catholic, coming at you with another Domestic Friday. Just a little bit of a breakdown on what we're going to talk about this week. So the first story will be about the travel ban. The next story will be about the biggest story, one of the two biggest stories of the week, Donald Trump Jr. and the possibility of collusion or illegal activities. And then the final story will be about the healthcare bill coming out of the Senate. So first, on the travel ban, Al Jazeera reports today that a federal judge in Hawaii has expanded the list of family relationships needed by people seeking new visas from 6 Muslim-majority countries to avoid President Donald Trump's ban. U.S. District Judge Derek Watson on Thursday ordered the government not to enforce the ban on grandparents, children, brother-in-laws, sisters-in-law, aunts, uncles, nieces, nephews, and cousins of people in the United States. Now, a little bit of background. A few weeks ago, the Supreme Court, in a 5-4 decision, yeah, 5-4 decision, argued that the travel ban could go into place, and the only people who could come in from those Muslim majority countries, and these countries are Libya, Iran, Somalia, Sudan, Syria, and Yemen. They could not come in unless they had a bona fide connection to the United States with a family member or an entity. And originally it was fiancés, mothers, fathers, children, and that is it. Um, but by expanding it to these groups, it's actually a lot better because the Western idea of family is the mother, father, fiance, children, whereas in Middle Eastern and countries and African countries, because some of these countries are in Africa, the idea of family is a little bit more extended and broader, and so this is really fitting in line with the cultural understanding of family. Also, it's the constitutional and moral thing. However, I think the ban should not be in place at all. So this is a step forward. Odds are, with the makeup of the court, it will not end well for the travel ban going away. Some of the justices, particularly Merrick Garland, wanted to go a little farther, but we got what we got. Um, well, actually, no, it was a 9 decision, and it'll probably be a 5-4 in favor of the Trump administration, unless Kennedy switches sides, which he's known to do. Um, Additionally, uh, Watson said the assurance by a resettlement agency to provide basic services to a newly arrived refugee constitutes an adequate connection to the U.S. because it is a sufficiently formal and documented agreement that triggers responsibilities and compensation. Now, but another part of the travel ban was that there were no refugees being allowed in from anywhere. So, yeah, there's Syrian refugees, but most of the refugees we are getting are from Burma, or Myanmar, as it's known today. So that means that refugees that have actual agreement with the settlement agency and have gone through all the paperwork will be allowed in, which is another great thing because these are people who are just wanting a safe place, and the U.S. to them is a safe place. And the hope of a refugee isn't to stay in the country where they're being a refugee. They want to go back to their home country. So really, we're just a place to a safe place to be until they're able to relocate. Some refugees do end up staying. A lot of Hmong refugees end up staying in the United States, and a lot of Somali refugees end up staying in the United States. A lot of refugees do end up staying in the United States, and become citizens, but their hope is to go back home. So Syrian refugees want to go back to Syria. Myanmar refugees want to go back to Myanmar. But until then, there's not really a lot they can do. They just need to find a safe place, and the United States is the place they chose. Again, hopefully the United States will get rid of this travel ban, but I am not too confident on that. Now, for the big story that came up at the beginning of this week, Washington Post on July 3rd reported that Donald Trump Jr., the president's son, said in a statement on Sunday that a Russian lawyer with whom he met on June 2016 claimed she could provide potentially damaging information about his father's likely Democratic opponent Hillary Clinton. So, a little bit of background. Donald Trump Jr. was promised some information, damaging information on Hillary Clinton, and then that meeting turned into issue about Russian adoptions and issues surrounding it. Um, and so the Trump administration is claiming that since nothing came of it, um, there is nothing there. However, uh, the New York Times posted the emails that Donald Trump Jr. Posted to Twitter. Uh, Rob Goldstone, who set up the meeting, emailed him on June 3rd that uh, his client, Emin, just called and asked him to contact Donald Trump Jr. with something very interesting. The Crown Prosecutor, no such title exists. He's just using a title that's used in the UK to describe a lawyer working for the Russian government. Russia met with his father Aras this morning and in their meeting offered to provide the Trump campaign with some official documents and information that would incriminate Hillary and her dealings with Russia and would be very useful to your father. This is obviously very high level and sensitive information, but is part of Russia and its government support for Mr. Trump, helped along by Aras and Emin. Now, a little bit of context. The Russian government does support either through action or opinion, various elected candidates throughout the world. Barack Obama was viewed more favorably by the Russians than either of his opponents, um, but there is no evidence that he ever worked with Russian officials. So this is where this comes into issue. And Donald Trump Jr. replied, "Thanks, Rob. I appreciate that. I am on the road at the moment, but perhaps I can speak with Emin first. Seems we have some time. Seems we have some time, and if that's what you say, I love it, especially late in the summer. Could we call for so? Basically, they set up a meeting out of this. Goldstone wouldn't sit on the meeting, but he would bring um, a couple of people there. Reports on who the second person was, who we don't really know. Uh, could be a translator, could be someone else. Likely it was a translator, which is something very common that is done. However, the idea that Russia is giving information to um, a campaign is a little is a suspect, um, and there are a lot of legal issues that could come up using stolen information because the campaign isn't just going to give them stuff. There is issues with things that Hillary Clinton did with the Russian government while Secretary of State, but there is no evidence that she worked with the Russians during the campaign. There is evidence that members of her campaign did work with the Ukrainians. However, uh, and either way, if Clinton campaign officials worked with the Ukrainians, there should be legal action against them, as should there be legal action against Trump campaign officials. Um, Not a lot of media outlets are going to talk about how there is evidence that points to Clinton campaign officials working with the Ukrainians. And this also came up around the time that Paul Manafort, who was campaign manager at the time of this meeting, um, had dealings with the former pro Russian Ukrainian governments. And the current Ukrainian government is trying to take down anyone who worked with them. And so this could be a very interesting set of developments with both sides. However, the White House did downplay this entirely. Sarah Huckabee Sanders said in a statement, the only thing, according to Reuters, she said, the only thing I see inappropriate about the meeting was the people that leaked the information on the meeting after it was voluntarily disclosed, adding that it was routine during political campaigns for people to call offering information. That's fine, opposition research happens, but it is illegal to take money or things of value or accept money or things of value from foreign governments or individuals, and opposition information, whether or not it actually came out of the meeting. The offer of is also could be considered illegal, and information for opposition research is something of value. So again, there's this big argument over what's going to happen, and there are also questions about what Donald Trump knew. Now, according to NPR, uh, the um, uh, it is plausible that that the president's eldest son, campaign chairman, and son-in-law, who continues to serve as a White House advisor, never told Trump about the Russian overtures. At one point from the chronology, at least one point from the chronology suggests they did. Then candidate Trump promised he would deliver a major speech attacking Clinton later the same day that Trump Jr. scheduled this meeting with the Russians who had promised dirt on her. Now, that could just have been Trump being his bombastic, idiotic self. It also could be he was told and he thought he'd have something major. Nothing ever came of that promise, so it seems very suspect, and an investigation needs to be done. An investigation needs to be very thorough. However, we won't know much until then. Now, finally, on to the new healthcare bill. So, the healthcare bill is already in trouble. Reuters uh, reported yesterday that Senate Republican leaders released on Thursday a revised plan to dismantle the Obamacare law, but it drew criticism from senators on both sides of the political divide within the Republican Party, indicating a treacherous path for the bill. Now, the House recently passed a repeal for the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare, um, and it was pretty draconian, and everyone thought, oh, the Senate bill is going to be better. It was not. And what Mitch McConnell, who is reported to have written the entire thing by himself, released originally was extremely draconian. It did major cuts to Medicaid, and there were many other issues with it, such as it was basically a massive tax break for the rich, who would have had all the taxes that were put in place to pay for the Affordable Care Act repealed, and there would have been a $888 billion tax cut slanted towards the super rich. There's massive backlash. There's been protests ever since. And then recently, there was a revised version, and instead of having a massive tax cut, Vox reports that it's now a $657 billion tax cut that's less slanted in its distribution among various groups. There are some taxes that are still put in place to help pay for uh, health care. Such as caps on compensation for CEOs and a few other things. Um, Part of the problem is that the ultra conservatives, led by Ted Cruz and Mike Lee, they want a little bit more, and it seems that they got one of their concessions at least, which is they wanted to introduce an amendment where insurance companies would be allowed to sell one a single healthcare bill plan that had everything that the healthcare law under the ACA required them to, which covered a plethora of things, and then everything else they can sell does not have to cover it. That is dangerous because that could cause a lot of issues with keeping healthcare sustainable, and a lot of insurance companies and a few insurance companies have come out against it. There's still massive cuts to the Medicaid expansion, and over the next 10 years, it'll be rolled back. And a lot of senators from states that that had Medicaid expansions, or in Susan Collins from Maine's case, could have Medicaid expansion. They don't really want that, and that could cause some friction. Um, there is also another thing. All of these issues that are coming up, the Senate Republicans are exempt from these proposals. So, uh, less health care for you poor people and middle class people, more health care for us. And we're constantly told that we have the best healthcare system in the world, but the Commonwealth uh, Fund re- released a report, as reported by The Atlantic today, that on the heels of this, that the think tank found that the U.S. medical system performed worst among 11 similar countries, all while spending more. The United States fared especially badly on measures of affordability, access, health outcomes, and equality between rich and poor. The UK ranked first, with other countries in comparison were Australia, Switzerland, Sweden, the Netherlands, New Zealand, Norway, Germany, Canada, and France. Now, Canada and France fared closely similar to us, but all the other countries were better. Now, America does quote perform well comparatively when it comes to doctor-patient relationship, end-of-life care, and survival rates after major issues like breast cancer or strokes. However, the U.S. does less well on measures of population health. It had high rates of infant mortality and a low life expectancy at 60 years. It also has the highest rate of mortality amenable to health care, which is basically deaths that could have been prevented, and it has experienced the smallest reduction in that measure in the past decade. So, this healthcare law does nothing to improve it. The Commonwealth Fund has studied it and has found no improvement. I have a feeling the CBO will also find no improvement. I'd hate to say I don't think that this healthcare law will pass, but we said that about the House bill, and that's what we're debating kind of now. So, a lot of things to keep an eye on. All links to all articles will be in the description below. Um, this is Joshua Zeller, your cultural Catholic, signing off.